Okay, the webinar has started. Please go ahead.
All right. Once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, to all the participants who have joined, to all who have joined us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram as well. Today, we are having a forum to discuss about the situation in Afghanistan. Just a brief background before I pass to moderator. This forum is conjunction with our 2021 Democracy Assembly, which will be held on 23rd and 24th of November. So leading up to our assembly, we have side events for selected few topics of few country. And today is our first side event, which is to discuss the situation, the issue or the situation in Afghanistan. Next week, we will have a forum discussing about Myanmar and then Dalit before our main forum. So the discussion today, we will then be shared on during our assembly, which will be held on 23rd and 24th, right? So a brief background again on why or what happened here on this whole Afghanistan. As we all know, on the 15th of August 2021, democratically elected government, or we can argue that, but there's a takeover by Taliban towards the Afghanistan government. So after 20 years, we see the process of trying to democratize Afghanistan. 20 years down the road, we got Taliban who came back to take power or seize power in Afghanistan. So the idea or the objective of this discussion today is to increase the awareness among CSO on pro-democracy actors on to know, because I think a lot of people, a lot of citizens or CSO as well, or pro-democrats, we only read through news or we get information from social media. But I think today we're having two panelists who, one is from media and Judge Najla, who is well known on the issue. We hope to understand or to get more awareness. And we hope that, to get some analysis on the situation that's happening in Afghanistan. And what we really like to achieve is basically also to understand the impact of the Taliban taking over Afghanistan. What is the impact to the regional as well, to the region, to Asia, or to the world as well, right? And most importantly, also for CSOs, activists, and pro-democrats all over the world to know what can we do or what can others do to assist our brothers, sisters, and friends in Afghanistan, who is, we believe that, they are still fighting for the cause to defend democracy, to defend human rights in their country, and how we can assist them whether directly or indirectly. And this forum, I will not introduce the panelists. I will leave it to our moderator to introduce, but let me introduce the moderator, Ms. Ruby from AMAN. She is a woman rights and human rights activist. She's the director of Asian Muslim Action Network. She is also a recipient of Peace Award. And I think she's been a very long time activist who's been dealing with all women rights issues, human rights, and I read some parts. She also has published, she also had a publication on a book. And thank you very much, Ms. Ruby, for agreeing to moderate this forum. And this forum is jointly organized by Asia Democracy Network, Forum Asia, and also AMAN. Over to you, Ms. Ruby.
Thank you, Brother Mandip, for the beautiful introduction. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and also maybe good evening for all of you living in the different part of the world. I wish you all in a good health. I've been working with the Asian Muslim Action Network. In the last 14 years, our organization working on strengthening women peace and security agenda in Indonesia and also in the region to make sure that women.
I can't hear you, Ruby.
Okay, you cannot hear me? Hello, check.
Yeah, now it's okay.
Oh, I need to put a microphone closer. So we have been working on women peace and I think one of the very crucial agenda is strengthen women inclusion. What it means by strengthening women inclusion, we want the government guarantee that women included in all peace process and also peace building. I think when we talk about women, peace and security, we tend to forget that one of the very important foundation on women, peace and security is actually democratic space and also the protection of human rights, in particularly the rights of women and girls and also marginalized people, including the minority. So that's actually make us connected one another. We are not so successful implementing in our own country without actually knowing that other country also, implementing the same agenda. So this is the situation where we are actually interconnected one another. That's also bring the reason why we are here. I think I read one of the very strong statement brought by the 5 women organization in Afghanistan about our rights, human rights, that very strong. And one of the very important in that statement is calling the international government do not recognize a regime that does not respect all human rights and also fundamental freedom. But we know that we need to concern on the people of Afghanistan. So today we are very honored to have 2 Afghan activists joining in our session to provide more updates about the situation, the current situation in the internal Afghanistan. But not only that, I think it will be great to hear from Najla and also Sanjar, Sohail, regarding how international responding this issue. Let me introduce Judge Najla Ayubi. She's the Chief of Coalition and Global Program at the Every Women Treaty, is a lawyer and former judge, and has extensive experience in judiciary, elections, human rights, and women empowerment. She is a civil society and a women human rights activist. She served as a legal advisor for the State Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs of Afghanistan, commissioner at the Independent Election Commission of Afghanistan, and the commissioner of Joint Electoral Management Body. And the second panelist is Mr. Sanjar Sohail, an Afghan Canadian, operated a daily newspaper in Kabul for 15 years up until the moment that Taliban seized control the capital city on August 15. I may not able to pronounce, but hers is Subah, which means 8 a.m. It's very unique, but you can tell about this, Brother Sohail, who started a newspaper in 2007 and has also been working as reporter for state radio since 2001, was trying to continue publishing stories online. I think I saw from the Twitter, the newspaper trying to bring the voices from the people, and that is the strong message to all of us to support the seeking for justice for the people of Afghanistan. So both the panelists will have 15 minutes for your presentation. And then after that, I will invite participants who are interested to make an intervention. Can be analysis, providing analysis or a question or feedback, whatever you think. Or you can also actually looking at the current situation in your country as implication of what happened in Afghanistan. Without further ado, I may give to the floor to Judge Najla first. in exploring the current situation of democracy, human rights, and people livelihood in Afghanistan, how this new government would carry on the agenda of democracy, women human rights, including freedom of expression under Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Judge Najla, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ruby. Very nice to be here also. You know, we just started our greetings, me and Sanjar, by, you know, you just saw a little bit of exchange, like just even few seconds, that how we feel Afghans, no matter where we are. It was quite a shock and quite a huge loss. We lost our country, we lost our people, we lost our dignity, we lost the 20 years hard work that we have put for the democratization of the country, that we believed in, with the hope, with the hope for our future generations. When we talk about democracy, I'm sure that everyone will look into what democracy includes, what democracy contains, particularly within any government that has to be a democratic government. So first of all, let's talk about the legitimacy of the Taliban. Do we think that the Taliban are legitimate government? First of all, they are not, because they came with the military force, first of all, and second, they don't have even the three pillars of the government so far. That's also another piece that we have to think about, whether the power, the three pillars of the power are there or not. Unfortunately, we see that it is a full dictatorship instead of having three pillars of judiciary, executive, and legislation. And also the participation of women, which is also another pillar and another characteristic of democracy. Unfortunately, we don't see the people's participation in any movement from the government to see that the people are directly or indirectly choosing or electing their leaders, which unfortunately we lost that piece of fragile, relatively fragile democratic processes that we put together. Also, the periodic election, we all know that the Taliban are not believing in elections and election processes. And particularly when we are talking about democracy, democracy is definitely, the election is one of the main pillar of the democracy, because the government, the people are somehow directly or indirectly through their representative, they are electing their government. Check and balance, unfortunately, we don't see any of the check and balance, because there is no government to see a check and balance, to be honest, because unfortunately, we don't see any of the pillars. Rule of law, which one of the characteristics of the democratic government is that law is above everything else, above every political system even. But unfortunately, we do see that there is no rule of law in the government in Afghanistan right now. You rightly mentioned that another piece is the fundamental rights of people. That's unfortunately, we see that how the Taliban treating women, men, women, not only women, but men and women, they lost their job, they lost their freedom of movement, they lost their even breathing. Unfortunately, people cannot even breathe in Afghanistan. People lost their work, people lost their property, people lost the dignity. As I mentioned, all of us as an Afghan, we lost all the, like, for instance, I lost my land, I lost my country. I don't have anywhere else to go. It just makes all of us so emotional that unfortunately, it's shamingly, international community is so silent and no one is talking about it. And we know that everybody is witnessing, everybody is looking into what is really happening. Yesterday, there was a a clip came out that every day we are seeing new attribution of the Taliban, retribution of the Taliban, of the people. The young boy, the young man, having a red cloth, what is the color, what the people could just think about it. And they were just putting him in, they were beating him because he had a red cloth on. So what that red clothes, you cannot even choose your clothes, the color of your clothes to wear. That's how we lost the fundamental rights of people. When I'm talking about all of these, seriously, just first of all, I became more emotional, and I'm sure that this is definitely, we all relate to each other, what we feel. I and Sanjar, both of us, and each Afghans where we are. I'm just looking back how hard in the past 20 years, we put all of our efforts, we put all of our resources. International community think that this is the fault of Afghans, that we lost the country. This is not actually. We were a very good partner with the international community. We were very good partner. We put our efforts, we put our resources, we put our talents, we built the country to the level that we had. Unfortunately, we had no educated people in 2001, but in 2021, you see that we have so many educated Afghans that you cannot even believe, because now you see people are going to the street. It wasn't the case in 1996. Unfortunately, when I remember when we were building the Constitution of Afghanistan, developing the Constitution of Afghanistan, and we were putting all those articles to see that how a democratic government would look like, how the men and women of Afghanistan could exercise their rights and their basic and fundamental rights. When I also looking back, how we exercised the first presidential election, and I'm sure Ichal is here and many of other colleagues that they may hear us right now, that we were exercising, bringing people from outside to monitor our election. That's part of the democracy. That's part of the transparency and accountability. I go back and see how we put the first parliament in place, how we brought women into the parliament, how we thought that the women and men are equal in front of the law. Freedom of speech, we were, I'm sure Sanjar John will, I'm sure that he will touch more on that we were a good example in the region of having a freedom of speech in the country. We had exercise to the high level. Also civil society, we were kind of, we had civil society, but not organized civil society in the past. But in the past 20 years, we built a civil society, and we also built a relatively an organized women's movement and human rights movement in the country. Also, we managed to get and exercise our rights to education, right to healthcare services, to health benefit, and also rights to work, the important piece that we were the one that, though we had lots of problem in the past because of lots of fraud, because of lots of political intervention, all sort of stuff in the past few elections that we had in Afghanistan. But still, that was somehow brought relatively legitimacy to the government and to the democratic processes of Afghanistan. I know that I'm very, very, when I'm talking now, it just makes me so nervous and so upset what happened. But what I'm also bringing here also just to, I'm sure that international communities, whether they're closely watching or just they're ignoring Afghanistan, because we see lots of human rights violations are happening, but we don't have anyone to speak, only Afghans. But even when we speak, we thought that the people, like even listening become like accountability become like a global impunity, impunity towards the violations of human rights in Afghanistan become like very normal. It became a kind of a normal situation for international community. They think that, okay, this is their normal life, and that's really bothers me, that why international community is not talking anymore or not doing anything. That's one aspect. And also another piece that I think the NGOs and the civil society within the region can do, that they can do a lot through their government, at least to not recognize the current government or the current Taliban. I cannot call them government because they are a group. They should not recognize that. The second thing, I think there should be one way or another way to pressurize the international community or even UN entities. I don't know what is the job of the United Nations right now. At least we bring some people into the country to bring all of those atrocities are happening in the country. That's also another piece that the civil society or NGO community could pressurize the United Nations and also other international authorities to bring up or to collect all of these violations from Afghanistan and bring them to the accountability at the global level. And also one more piece that I would like to say, and then I will stop. This is also important because we watch the international community. Yes, the United States were the leading government on intervention in Afghanistan and also withdrawal. But what about other governments? We had 48 governments in Afghanistan. They were all involved. What about the other countries? Why they're also silent? I don't know whether they are following the United States, or somehow they're also thinking, okay, this is new normal for Afghans. Let them be, So where is the accountability? While we are also talking, we learned from international community. We have been helped by international community. We have been told by international community. What is the accountability? What is transparency? What is the human rights? All of these things, probably we didn't know the way that now we know that all of these subjects, but unfortunately now all of them are silent. No one is talking about it. So my point is that how the NGO community and civil society groups within the region and out of the region can talk to all of these 48 countries, bring them to accountability. Why Afghans' life not matter anymore? That's my last piece. Thank you. Sorry, I'm getting so emotional when I'm speaking, and it just really frustrates me a lot.
I know. Thank you so much, just Najla. No, you are right. And you have the rights to be emotional in seeing what's happening now in Afghanistan, and particularly witnessing how respond to the situation. So I am interested to follow up with some of the question, but I think I have to give a floor to Sanjar Sohail first in exploring the current situation of freedom of expression, knowing that you are journalists and you know that many people recognize that your constitution also very much recognize the freedom of expression, and maybe you also have the media law that previously been built with the spirit of democracy. And I know this is a big challenge in the current context where Taliban seems don't have any specific direction on how actually could utilize the previous product to protect the people. So you can explore surrounding that issue, including, I am interested, you also can touch upon on what will be the legal challenges in the future in the context of freedom of expression. Thank you. Screen is yours, brother.
Thank you, Ruby. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to be part of this very timely and important event on the current situation of Afghanistan. My name is Sanjar. I'm a journalist and publisher of the largest daily newspaper of Afghanistan. Before saying anything, I'd like to say that I fully support what Judge Najla mentioned in her statement. Unfortunately, we've been betrayed and we left alone to the fate. Our fates are in the hands of a bunch of criminals and killers and terrorists right now. As mentioned, the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, which was established in 2004 under a new constitution, has completely collapsed on August 15 after the escape of the Afghan president Ashraf Ghani. On the same day, the Taliban entered the capital of Afghanistan. Unfortunately, with the return of the Taliban to power, once again, Afghanistan is facing a complete lawlessness, anarchy, and authoritarianism. The Taliban not only suspended the Afghan constitution, but they have also suspended all universal rights such as freedom of speech, freedom of association, and freedom of movement. More importantly, from the first day of their return to power, millions of our Afghan girls are not allowed to attend to their schools and universities. At the same time, women are not allowed to go outside and work. The Taliban also publicly denouncing any compliance to the international treaties and conventions. Since the first day of their return, they have completely abandoned all three branches of the state. And for the first few weeks, the country were in a complete power vacuum. In fact, Afghans are living under a draconian and primitive style of governance in which a group of criminals, killers, terrorists, and fundamentalist Islamic fanatics are making day-to-day decision for 40 millions of Afghans. Additionally, the group has no knowledge of modern governance whatsoever. For the past 20 years, the group were busy fighting, killing, and destroying the country. Their ideology is based on a narrow and a primitive interpretation of Islam. In their interpretation of Islam, rule of law, democracy, political legitimacy, public participation, civil society, human rights, and freedom of speech has no place. Sadly, since the return of the Taliban, many independent media outlets, CSOs, NGOs, and human rights organizations has completely stopped their operation, and their staff is either escaped the country or hiding in fear of prosecution, torture, and target killing. Additionally, despite announcing general amnesty to the public, we are witnessing a growing number of target killings of civil society activists, human rights defenders, and former state employees all over Afghanistan on a daily basis. Just 4 days ago, in the northern province of Balkh province in Afghanistan, 4 bodies of women activists were found, tortured and killed by unknown gunmen, which of course is the Taliban. The target killings of Afghan civil society activists, journalists, human rights defenders, and former state employees are now happening all over Afghanistan on a daily basis. Public execution, torture, humiliation, beating, and shooting of ordinary Afghans are happening every day and all over Afghanistan. There has been an increasing number of incidents in which people were publicly beaten, tortured, had humiliated just because of their clothing or their style or their way of living. While the Taliban has introduced a new caretaker government, the new administration has no constitutional legitimacy. In fact, the Taliban do not believe in any form of constitutional legitimacy, election, open society, and public participation. In the Taliban's view, democracy and public participation are against their Islam and should not be practiced at all. With the return of the Taliban, Afghan economy is also experiencing a catastrophic decline, and millions of Afghans lost their sources of income. According to UN, more than half of Afghans facing food insecurity at crisis or emergency level. Food insecurity, mass unemployment, and the complete collapse of the Afghan economy is creating one of the worst humanitarian crises in the history of our region. According to some estimates, if Afghans do not receive urgent food and medical supplies before the winter, a few million would die due to anger and lack of access to medical aid. Unfortunately, the Taliban does not have the capacity to deliver the humanitarian aid to the needed population. While the Taliban leadership claims that they have the capability of the aid distributions, we have credible reports and evidence that they do not, that they want to misuse those aids in favor of their own interests and policies. Therefore, the Taliban should not be trusted, and the humanitarian should not be given to the Taliban for distribution. I suggest the Taliban should never ever be trusted as a partner in the distribution of humanitarian aids, as they would waste the aid or use it in their own interest and agendas. Any humanitarian aid for Afghan population should go through local and international NGOs with a broad-based monitoring and evaluation system. In this way, the Taliban would not be able to use the humanitarian aid for their own interest and leverage. I would like to stop here. Thanks again for having me, and I will be more than happy to answer if there is any questions.
Yeah, before opening the session for Q&A, I am interested to explore one that you mentioned. You frame the Taliban government as the criminal and also terrorist, and we know all that after September 11, how close the relationship of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And in Indonesia, it is very common that terrorists actually been sent to Afghanistan for training, gain a lot of skill, so they can do terrorist act inside Indonesia. But what specific situation and condition of the Taliban victory and the cabinet right now that possibly influence the rise of fundamentalism and violent extremism in the region, do you think? Brother Sanjar.
Thank you so much. They have fought side by side for the past 20 years against the Afghan government and the international community in Afghanistan. There are many groups like Al-Qaeda, AITM, the Uyghur fighters from China, Tajik fighters from Tajikistan. They have all links to Daesh, ISIS, to Al-Qaeda, and different other terrorist organizations. They have fought for the Taliban for the past 20 years, and now they have immunity, and they are freely walking on the streets of Kabul and all other provinces of Afghanistan. The situation of the country with this type of immunity for terrorists and killers would certainly create us an environment for the growth of these terrorist organizations. Unfortunately, the world is forgetting. The world has forgotten what happened 20 years ago on September 11 in New York, or elsewhere in London, Madrid, or in different parts of the world, or in the past 20 years, what happened in Afghanistan. We have lost more than 120,000 people due to this suicide bombing of the Taliban. Kids, children, women, they have attacked universities, hospitals, clinics, different civilian institutions for the past 20 years. And now they are in power. They are in power, and they are controlling 40 million people and huge territory. And they have also captured many sophisticated military equipment from the Americans and the Afghan government. So it's very certain that the Afghan territory will be used by this terrorist network against the region, against the other countries, and the world should be waiting for that. And at the same time, as I mentioned, unfortunately, there are 5 most wanted terrorists on the cabinet list of the Taliban.
Yeah.
The most wanted criminal of FBI is now the Interior Minister of Afghanistan. So you just judge from that how a most wanted person, can be an Interior Minister providing security and safety for the public. So this certainly will result in more unity among terrorist organizations, and this would create an environment for them to freely operate and organize and plan terrorist attack in different parts of the world.
Yeah. Judge Najla.
Yeah, I fully support what Sanjar mentioned about what is really happening. And the sad part is that the international, these terrorists, the extremists or the fundamentalists and the extremists had no territory. Now they have a territory, a formal territory that they can do whatever they want from there, right? So it's a very safe sanctuary for other terrorist groups not only within the region but also globally. Like we have seen Chechenis, as Sanjar mentioned, Tajiks, extremist Tajiks, Uzbeks, from China, from Pakistan, even from Saudi Arabia, from all over the world. They have been, I think I mentioned in one of the other occasions that we have talked about, that even they have been told that they will be given a woman as a property. So even they have a piece, or what they call it, encouragement, like an award that when they're coming to fight in Afghanistan or to be in Afghanistan, at least to be part of this government, definitely they will be given a woman as a property. So you see that if they will be given a woman property, definitely they will have a land, they will have, that's why many of Afghans, we lost the country. But unfortunately, we see that how the international community is also giving them, providing them this opportunity, but without noticing that this will be a huge backlash. Not only it has been a backlash on us, on Afghans, but also it will be a huge backlash on the international community. We are setting a very bad example, and we are setting a very bad reputation. And I hope the international community will sit and look into it very, very carefully and see what will be the consequences of having a extremist government in place, and then what will the consequences will be on the entire world security.
I think I'm interested to explore on the side of the future. I know many people feel hopeless with the situation, but let's put that something miracle happened, and we are now doing and creating a miracle by having this forum, also having another forum that people are expecting how we can consolidate the voices against the situation or helping the people of Afghanistan. So under restricted democracy in Afghanistan, what would be the suitable approach to the political, economic, and diplomatic power to pressure the new government to be committed to CEDAW Convention, democracy and minority rights, and as the full process, in particularly engaging the Afghan women peace builders? Judge Najla.
Yeah, I think this is very easy answer. First of all, we have to do an assessment. What really happened? Why we are in this situation? First of all, this is the important piece, because where we failed, where as Afghans failed, and where the international community failed, and what was the real cause that it brought us to this situation, and unfortunately, an ugly situation, not for us, but also for everybody. And second, I think that's also another piece that maybe we need to also realize that the Taliban, I know that the Afghan people are not the same Afghan people that we were in 1996. We are more accessible. We have access to broader community, to broader international community, and the broader international community have access to us also. Not only Afghans within Afghanistan, but also out of Afghanistan. That's also another piece. We have to look into that piece. What can be done? And the third point is that for me, as you know, I'm working on the global treaty ending violence against women. We have to also look at the international legal framework, how the international legal frameworks are really. Do we have the international legal framework to make the Taliban government accountable what they are doing right now, and particularly defending or protecting women's rights? That's another aspect. And the fourth one, I think the only thing that we can bring them into accountability, in my opinion, I don't know, maybe many people may not agree with me, particularly I'm talking about the women's rights, is the only thing that can save women's rights is the global treaty ending violence against women and girls. That's what we are proposing. I think I mentioned before in one of your other events also, that we are looking into whole of a government and a whole of a society approach. We have to make sure that the government and the civil society, all of us, have to have an approach to make sure that the women and girls' rights have be protected. How? Of course, we don't have legislations right now. We don't have even the mothers of the law, which is constitution, we don't have in Afghanistan anymore. We have to have the laws in the country. We have to label the laws for women and girls in the country. Second, the professional, because unfortunately we don't have judges. Judges are all sent home. The prosecutors are all sent home. We don't have them. Second, we have to train them on those laws that we have to have. And the third one, providing services. And the fourth one is definitely prevention education. All of these Taliban, unfortunately, as a result of the lack of knowledge, lack of education, they all have been exposed to these extremist ideas and extremism theory. The fourth one is the fifth one is the funding. Unfortunately, we don't have funding. Funding is important. And the sixth, monitoring and evaluation. How we can provide and create a very strong monitoring and evaluation mechanism to be able to make the Taliban, not only the Taliban government, any government around the world, that they are violating women human rights and girls.
Thank you so much. Brother Sohail, do you have another approach that you think can bring the current government, the Taliban, to be more accountable, knowing that they also hoping, right, international support or international recognition to the government?
Well, the Taliban have been supported by regional powers in the past 20 years. They have masters in the region. And I think the international community should approach the Taliban through these masters, which is Pakistan and Qatar. Qatar hosted Taliban for the past few years, and the Taliban were active in the Pakistan since 2001. We should put pressure on the Taliban to be accountable and to act as a responsible government, and they should also give the space for other active players in Afghan society. This is as I mentioned, this is not a legitimate force. They are
Yes.
not a legitimate political party. They are not a legitimate government. They have seized the power militarily. They haven't seized the hearts and minds of the population. The population hates them. We are seeing and we are witnessing a growing number of rejection by protest, by many sorts of other types of rejection on the streets of Kabul and elsewhere in Afghanistan. So that the Afghan population does not accept the Taliban as a legitimate force, as a legitimate political power. The second thing is, I think, through these regional powers, that they obey the Taliban, obey their orders and their direction. I think we should encourage and put pressure on the Taliban to come back to the negotiation table. They should allow the creation of an inclusive government in Afghanistan. In the 21st century, we cannot live with this style of draconian, style of governance. We cannot live in isolation. We should be connected to the world. We should be talk to each other. We should use the experiences of other nations and build our institution, our government, our state. So this way of governance and this way of dealing with the state and a state institution is so primitive. It's not gonna last forever. As I mentioned in my statement, the humanitarian crisis is unfolding, and if there is the Taliban do not obey international treaties and convention and rule of law, this would create one of the biggest humanitarian crises of the history, with the maybe death of 3 to 5 million Afghans in this coming winter.
Wow. Okay. So thank you for all the update information. One very last question from me before opening the Q&A. Currently, there are many, it has been like more than 2 years, let's say, the international community supporting, the better development in Afghanistan, including improvement of democracy, human rights, women's rights, minority rights, and also good governance. And we believe that people in Afghanistan, as Judge Najla mentioned, that currently they capacity are different comparing to the previous 20 years ago. So let's say currently they have a different capacity, but at the same time, we also witnessing that there are many activists had to flee from the country because they need to rescue and they need to re-strategize to fight with the Afghanistan. So I'm interested to see that, are you confident enough to seeing that internal capacity inside the Afghanistan? Let's talk about the people and human resources there are able to resist to Taliban better comparing to the previous one. Are you confident enough? Brother Sanjar, and go to Najla.
I am witnessing. I have a network of journalists all over Afghanistan, and we have worked closely with the communities for the past 20 years. I know my country well. There has been some issues in some part of Afghanistan due to the war and the so-called war against the terror. Unfortunately, the international community, as mentioned by Judge Najla, did not touch foundation of the problem in our region. They just searched and bombed or killed ordinary Afghans, which created, unfortunately, a space for the Taliban for recruitment. Because you know, there were no way of, you know, of dealing with that situation. So unfortunately, it created an environment for the Taliban to recruit more people. But the foundation of the problem were elsewhere, outside the borders of Afghanistan. As I mentioned, it was in Pakistan. The Pakistan establishment is still actively producing millions and millions of these type of terrorists. And they are and for the past 20 years and many years before that, there are many examples that if you go, any terrorist activities, any suicide bombing can be traced back to the Pakistani military establishment. So unfortunately, the international community came to Afghanistan. They stayed there. They fought along Afghan people, but they did not touch the foundation of the problem. The foundation of the problem is still there. So any sorts of dealing with the problem of this fundamentalism and terrorist issue in the region should be dealt with the Pakistani establishment. The Pakistani establishment is a cancer for the region and for the world. And the world should be awakened to this problem and should deal with it as soon as possible. Otherwise, this would spread fast in the region. As I mentioned, there are Tajiks, there are Uzbeks, there are Turkmens, there are Chechens, there are Arabs, there are Uyghurs fighting against side by side with the Taliban, and they are gonna expand. They are gonna expand in the region. So the second thing is that the public, the people in Afghanistan is very you know, the people in Afghanistan, they don't have lots of expectations. They just want to live in peace and prosperity like other human beings. We are not different than other parts of the world, than other human beings in the rest of the world. So we just want to live in peace and prosperity. Unfortunately, for the past 45 years, our land, our territory was used as a battleground of superpowers. The Russians came, the Americans and the rest of the West fought against the Russians through these warlords and these fundamentalists. Actually, these ideology of the Taliban was created in the 80s when they were fighting against the Russians. This is the result of the bad policies of the West in the 80s. We are paying a bad price, you know, a very bloody price for the policies of the Reagan administration. So the world should wake up. You know, we are here. We are victim. We haven't masterminded this situation. This has been the result of the policies of the West and the other superpowers, which they used our land for the fighting of their own interests.
Thank you. Judge Najla.
Yeah, thank you. I echo what Sanjar John mentioned. Unfortunately, when the interest of the superpowers are there, definitely they're coming, they're creating, they're bombing, they're exercising, they're experimenting, anything that it's really depends. It's a land of experiments, of democratic governments or communist governments, and then democratic government, and the jihadis and the Taliban, and finally now the fundamentalists and also the extremists, that how an extremist government will look like. This is an experiment, I feel. That's one. And second, I would like to mention that naturally, Afghan people they learn how to resist. I'm very hopeful. I don't know, sometimes I'm very hopeful that not only in the past centuries that we have been invaded by British 3 times, and then I don't want to say that we beat them, but it's still, somehow 3 times we have been resisted. And then all these 40 years right now, we still resist, And even when the Taliban cannot fully govern Afghanistan, it means that we resist. There are people that they resist not by fighting, but also by their education,
right?
By our civil society, by our media resist. People resist. Now the what we call citizen journalism is so high that you cannot even hide stuff. This morning I was looking at the clip that the woman, I'm sure that she was an uneducated woman. She was filming the situation from the top of her roof, and then she was spreading around. It means that the people resist, the people have a knowledge, people have the access to technology. At least the mobile phone that's use of the mobile phone by uneducated women is a huge difference between now and 1996. So that's why it makes me more hopeful that we resist in a different way. Yes.
Thank you so much. So now can I invite directly Karel has a question here, and Talibert, and also let me check on the Q&A. Oh, it's not. Hang on. And Anushaya. Karel, would you like to just open your screen? And I think it's good to have your voice instead of I'm reading.
Yes.
The question. Okay, go on.
Thank you, Barubi. One question that I had in mind. I mean, China was among the few countries that first, expressed that they will remain in the country after the Taliban took over. No, how would you describe this relationship, and what sort of started this relationship in the first place, and how should the international community react or treat such relationship at present? So either of the panelists perhaps can answer the question.
Thank you. Brother Sanjar, do you want to start?
Thank you. Well, the Chinese government was afraid of the presence of American troops in Afghanistan for the past 20 years. They thought the Americans were there to do something against their interest, the Chinese interest in the region. Unfortunately, the Chinese government, including many other regional powers, Iranian government, Russians, and smaller countries in the region, they don't have any clear policy toward Afghanistan. Their policies are mostly, as mentioned by Judge Najla, it was mostly based on the interests of others in Afghanistan. So whenever they were reacting toward Afghanistan, it was based on the phobia of like that the Americans are here, they want to create something bad for them, and at the same time they thought that because the Taliban were in the control of the Pakistani masters, and because the Chinese government have very strong relationship with the Pakistani establishment, they thought that through the Pakistani masters they can they can trust the Taliban, and the Taliban would eliminate the Uighur fighters from Afghanistan. But since the takeover of Afghanistan, the Taliban have not taken any action against the Uighurs or other terrorist networks who fought with them for the past 20 years. So now, despite the willingness of the Chinese government at the beginning, and the engagement of the Chinese government with the Taliban, and even the having the Mullah brother, the deputy prime minister of the Taliban current administration, they had them in Beijing, and they welcomed them very warmly. Despite those welcoming, gestures and engagement, now I see that the Chinese government is cautiously approaching the Taliban. They are not. They are following the rest of the region because the region is saying that we are judging the Taliban by their actions, but not by their thoughts or talks. So Taliban in their action shows that they are not willing to eliminate any of those terrorist groups in Afghanistan. That's why I think the Chinese government is now is not willing to engage with the Taliban as fast as they were doing it before the takeover.
Just Najla.
Yeah, thank you. It's very interesting that I think I would like to just bring something totally different. So everyone else is talking to Taliban except Afghans. Unfortunately, right now we see United States directly or indirectly in Qatar, they're talking to them, right? Mm-hmm. The China talk to them. All these regional countries that we have, they are also talking. We see that anything coming on the surface is totally different from what is happening behind closed doors and behind out of cameras, like even Chinese. Why we think that Chinese are also relatively trying to be very, very careful treating Taliban and not making them enemies, because they know that this is very easy for them to cross the border and then attack them or somehow be engaged with the Uyghurs in China. And also another piece that I wanted to just also bring, that China is really strongly interested in mining in Afghanistan. So that's also another aspect, that they don't want it to create such an environment to be enemies with the Taliban, because there is a lot of mining. They are very, what they call it, they are from the beginning, even in the past 20 years, they were still investing on the mining sector industry in Afghanistan. So that's also another piece that I wanted to mention. And another piece that, one more point that I wanted to say, that because of the regional dynamics, particularly having access to the nuclear weapon through Pakistan, that's also another piece that no one from the region wants to make or create an environment or a space with the Taliban to be their enemies, because they are afraid of themselves. Because the way that they Taliban by themselves were shocked how they came into power, because they were not ready even to take a government. And at the same time, all the regional powers and regional actors and international actors. So now it is very premature to talk about if China is interested or not. We heard that the China already, after the withdrawal, the full withdrawal of United States, the China mentioned that they are coming into background base and they are going to rebuild the background base, which they were even before Russians in background base. Because I'm coming from Parwan and background bases in Parwan, and I know how Chinese were investing in my province and also investing in background. And now they announced even the withdrawal that no worries, we will come and we rebuild the background base. It means that they would like to, as I mentioned earlier, that on the surface, in front of camera, they say one thing, but we don't know what is really happening behind closed doors, with Pakistan being negotiating or Pakistan being at the middle in supporting the Taliban.
I totally agree with Najla. Yes, what's happening on the public is totally different with what's happening on behind the closed doors, because the Taliban have very warm relationship with the Taliban, with the Chinese government, and they have one of the things that I'm seeing every day is the current foreign minister of the Taliban is meeting the Chinese ambassador 3-4 times a week. So that shows something that's going on behind closed doors. There is a question from my old friend Telebert. I would like to answer that. It's about the internet.
Yeah. You want to respond directly, or do you want Talibert speak?
Yeah, I want him to speak. It's been a little while that I haven't
please
heard it.
Open your camera and speak. Let's see how we can.
I want to see him also, because we are old friends.
Different situation. So Talibert, can you hear me?
Can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Talibert.
I apologize. I don't have a camera in my system, but it's really a great pleasure to hear from Judge Najla and Sanjar. It's been a while, but let me go directly to my question. So to date, the Taliban has kept access to the internet open, and we know that they also use social media. Question is, why do you think are they continuing to do so? And I think that they're not asking for legitimacy from the West, but what could be the reason? If they were to shut down the internet, what might their big reason be if they do so? Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Yes, thank you, Talibert. Please, Najla or Sanjar can respond.
Sanjar, thank you. It's great to hear you, Telebert. After a long time, we've been working together for election observation and building the first Afghan independent observation NGOs, FIFA, Free and Fair Election Foundation. And Telebert was a source of knowledge and expertise, and he helped us a lot. So on the issue of internet, there are many reasons for that. First of all, in the past 20 years, the Afghan government, with the help of international community, particularly the US, they have built a system which they can control and observe and monitor the connections and the contacts of everyone through internet and phone. So they have the capacity to monitor what's going on those platforms. This is the first issue. So they don't have any concerns that these platforms will be used against them. We have seen many incidents that the Taliban were catching people just because of contacting each other, organizing protests, or talking to each other. Yes, so unfortunately, they have the capacity, the spying capacity to follow people and to arrest people. This is the first thing. They don't have any worries about that. The second issue is the taxation. The telecommunication industry is the only functional industry right now in Afghanistan, with the subscription of almost 20 million people. So for any purchase of top-up cards or mobile or SIM cards, they charge 10% taxation. So it's a source of income for them. That's why they have left it open to have that source of income and the money. They are clever. They are smart. That 10% of taxation is a huge money it's with this situation that we have, there is no aid money coming.
Hello. Okay, seems Sanjar is cut off. Okay.
I think she froze. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you can continue, just Najla.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I agree. And thank you, Mr. Taliban. Nice to see you here. And I'm also so long time. And thank you for being here and listening to us. And I'm glad to be reconnected again. So, yeah. I agree, and I echo what. Oh, I think Sanjar is talking still.
No, I don't hear anything.
Oh, okay.
You can go on.
So I echo what Sanjar mentioned, but also I would like to. This is another way of buying international community attention, because otherwise international community will not know them. They also realize that how they can also get social media will also buy them attention, and also a place that they will show. It's a kind of a show off to international community or to everybody outside that, okay, look, last time we were not allowing people to watch a TV or even listen to radio or see anything, or even keep the pictures in their homes, which now they are also searching outside of Kabul. In each villages, they are asking people to remove any pictures on their walls. That's also another piece that we have to also mention. So that's one aspect. In another aspect, I think this is also, they're also somehow their leaders or the people who advise them, that's also telling them, okay, by this way you can gain certain areas or certain fields, basically as source of income, as source of buying attention, and also at the same time as source of showing your progress towards your fundamental thinking that you're not the same Taliban as you were in 1996. So that's also another aspect, I think. And another piece that it's also, they cannot also live without technology anymore, because they have been part of it, and they're living in this world anyways, being open to it or not being open to it. They lived, and they know, they also benefited from the mobile phone or with the social media or anything that related to the social media, definitely. So all of these are definitely, from my opinion, are the way that how they treat the social media and use social media, and they will not lose anything except they will gain too.
Yeah. Brother Sanjar, you cut off. Do you want to add more on the issue of social media?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was disconnected for a while. Yes, I was just want to add that the Taliban have learned a lot about the misuse of social media in the past 20 years. They were very active in different platforms, and they know the benefit of using those platforms. So they are actively using those platforms in favor of their own agendas and policies. Interestingly, many of the Taliban officials of now are on Twitter or on Facebook. They are using other platforms for propaganda and engagement with the public. So yes, they know the benefit of being active on those platforms, and as I mentioned, as they have the capacity to spy on people through their technical capabilities that they have seized after the collapse of the Afghan government. So they have no worries that the public or the people would use the internet or media against them. And as I mentioned, that if there are any incidents or any issues that they see, they go after them. There have been lots of incidents, unfortunately, that people were, like my colleagues were beaten and tortured. They have been put in prison just because of filming or just because of reporting from the way that they are treating people on the streets of Kabul or elsewhere. So yes, they use this as a tool for their own policies. And at the same time, this is creating an income for them. 10% of taxation for any top up is not a small amount of money.
Yeah. So I'm very curious on the using social media. I think the like kind of free space for a group actually to use the social media on the side of activists, the people who would like to voice loudly and to get international attention on what's happening inside the Afghanistan. Do you see the way they're using social media differently currently? Because both Taliban and the people using social media, and Taliban can actually easily catching people if they're using the original identity. But I'm interested to see how people negotiate using this space.
I would go, no problem. So one thing that it's also for people, I heard from many of my friends and colleagues back, thousands and hundreds and thousands of women's rights and human rights activists, that they have been also followed through different platforms that we were using. Even during the evacuation, I saw another question about the evacuation, if the evacuation are also happening right now. And because of like, Sanjar John mentioned about the 4 women and 2 another woman, like 6 women in the north of Afghanistan being assassinated because they have been also contacted. Somehow they have been traced, they have been tracked down, and they have been contacted by Taliban that they are from a very native speaker, a very good speaker, English speaker. They call them, asking them, okay, we are the people that we are going to evacuate you. This was the trap that they put in place. So it means that they are tracking people. They are trying to, and many people who are very cautious, they try to just change their account or block their account somehow. One way or another, people even not using the WhatsApp anymore. They're trying to just use the safest, other safe platforms just to make sure that they will be not tracked down. So that's also another piece that people observe, and also there is a kind of competition between the people and between the Taliban, because people trace them also. They try to just make sure the level of information that you see, that how the information flies from one hand to another hand among the activists, among the people of Afghanistan, and it's exactly happening among the Taliban, because they're also know, and definitely some of their elements are among the activists. We don't know. Sometimes we don't know. We are sharing information that social media, it's bring a lot of facilities, but also there are a lot of insecurities. So you will be also tracked. You will be tracked down also by the Taliban, because their elements are definitely somehow one way or another they are putting themselves inside of the Afghan population. So I see this like a kind of a competition, or like a kind of a match between Afghan people and also. But if you're lucky, you will be not catched. But if you're not, and exactly right now, we hear from many of the activists that they are not taking their phones outside, because there are checkpoints on this in the city, in Kabul, elsewhere, that they're grabbing the phones and they're checking their phones. Any social activities that they're doing. So it means that they know how to do it, right? So
right. Brother Sanjar.
Yeah, as Judge Najla mentioned, they are also using this as a tool to track down people who wants to escape or who wants to connect to each other after the collapse. They are contacting civil society activists and human rights activists, journalists, and posing to be an NGO worker of international, an international NGO, and saying that you should come here and we will provide you with a safe passage to outside Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And then they just torture them and killing them. So they are using that as a tool for their own policies, as I mentioned. But yes, I think slowly, probably with the continuation of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, we need to learn more about cybersecurity and how to be safe using those platforms from within Afghanistan. And I think this is one of the things that we are looking from our friends in the Asian Democracy Network and elsewhere to provide us with that. Like for example, in Iran, many organizations is providing like protection filters for people to not be tracked by the government agencies of Iran whenever they are connecting to each other. So we need to learn those tricks and those technicalities of the issues, and at the same time, we need to develop those capacities from within Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan, and provide that to the people who are still in Afghanistan and people who wants to connect to each other and to protest and to organize events and things like that. And I think it's very important to do that fast and as soon as possible.
So thank you. We know that at the beginning that we want to have this session is actually for our solidarity in helping people of Afghanistan, and all of you who joining in this conversation, please think something that could help the local activists and journalists in continuing strengthening democracy, freedom of expression, and improving literacy for the people, particularly women and girls. I'm opening up this suggestion for follow-up that we can really craft it solidarity in helping our friends in Afghanistan. Open for forum. Anyone would like to share, but you have 1 minute that maybe could complete the session. Anyone would like to share? How can we help? The situation is very complex, but I believe that Judge Najla and also Brother Sanjar already explore possible way how actually we can intervene in Afghanistan through different way. In particular, we look. I am not a government. Maybe you are not government, but we still people that actually can connect each other and helping each other. Come on, friends. Anyone? Yes, Bang Ichal?
Yeah, I think people still try to digest very rich informations and expectation from two wonderful speakers and then the previous questions. I guess indeed we have to admit that this is not suggestions, but just to try to giving my assessment from the perspective of the regional organizations. Indeed, the Afghans news shocking. The Afghan situation shocking the world. What went wrong with that kind of transition process? The news is almost every day in the newspaper cover, BBC, CNN. You're telling electronic and then printing. But very less awareness from even people in the regions. And if you're asking many, as far as South Asia, I can see only maybe Pakistan, India, and only bordering countries that really responding. And then slowly the response was weakening and finally almost disappears at the moment of times, months after, let's say after the takeovers. And then the sound is very, very low, even in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
I think that is very unfortunately, and it's becoming my concern as well, because I know the international or relation, it is very complicated, but many things that actually civil society can do. And especially I know many Afghan are flee now for the safety, but there are plenty still inside. So I get concerns. So I want to put it. I want to put in some kind of like a provoking, let's say, suggestion or proposals. I think once this should be keep continuing to amplifying the concerns, to keep voicing out what's going on in the past. I mean, in the recent takeovers, or even the current situation of Afghanistan. And then civil society, for us, we need to keep reminding, and then keep inviting our friends, civil society, to involve with whatever they can to help. So I think I taking notes, a few Sanjar, Sohail friends that need as soon as possible filtering people protections and then to build capacity skill within Afghanistan. I think this is very good suggestion. I will take forwards and then communicating with Sanjar, Sohail, and then of course Forum Asia. Don't forget, Forum Asia have protection program as well. Number two, I think we need to keep continuing to discuss and exploring possibility to pressurizing international governments from the civil society. Let us make noise as much as possible, especially for the neighboring country. If they don't expecting diplomatic relation because of the many of the international norm and standards, and then why don't they starting with humanitarians or even providing protections or asylum, at least for the temporary. But I agree, I am strongly disappointed with many of the response of the neighboring country, especially many Islamic countries also silent, including Indonesia. But of course, there's a lot of the excuse that they always putting why they keep silence. And the third, I think we need to enhancing connection between Afghan in exile, right, and with the international communities. I think there's so many separating, let's say, grouping right now. Of course, they are just recently, I think they try to regroup. And then I think it's very important to touch upon and then keep communicating with friends in different continent like Europe, Australia, US, Canada, and other part of the world to bring one unity of the support. And finally, I think it is time to think, besides we are still continuing our emergency evacuation, emergency support. I think it's important to convincing international communities to supporting the Afghan in exile to continuing their works abroad. And of course, last but not least, I still don't know how, but then from the presentations of Sanjar, Sohail, and then Najla, feeling there's a crisis, humanitarian, even bigger humanitarian crisis, and then atrocities. I think we should not silence as a civil society. I have to stop from that point, and then perhaps that can provoke others to come out and jump to some kind of more suggestion and proposal. Over back to you. Thank you, Ruby.
Thank you. Mas Ichal. So all of you who are interested to share your ideas and also for the future of our solidarity and more concrete action for Afghanistan, I think ADN can facilitate for the next, discussion, or even we can continuing exchange and how to bring the voices from Afghanistan to be heard. And then in particular, if you're based in your own country, it is also important to speak loudly and also voices as civil society and push your government to be responsive and also start thinking about what their future diplomacy, what they future response for Afghanistan. And I add Mas Ijal, how do you call it, statement in regard to how important holding the situation in Afghanistan be accountable and transparency. I think whether the civil society can monitor and document the human rights violation and all the happening inside the Afghanistan as the evidence to continue advocacy at the international or even at the national level. Thank you for bringing this discussion here, ADN, Forum Asia, and all friends who joining in this conversation. This is not the last. We are still looking and the other more conversation and updating about Afghanistan. And let's find a way how to help and bring more hopes for Afghanistan. Thank you so much, and give back to Mandeep.
Thank you, Ruby, for excellent moderation. Thank you, Judge Najla and Brother Sanjar, for your fruitful insight and analysis on what is happening in Afghan. Rest assured, I believe that civil society organization activists will stand together with friends in Afghanistan. I know Najla, you mentioned earlier, Judge, that probably people look like Afghan lives doesn't matter. I don't think so. I think we will stand in solidarity. We should build a bigger solidarity, like what Ichal said. And lastly, I think the struggle goes on for all of us. And hopefully we will, meet soon again to discuss new strategies. Probably the next time when we meet, we discuss about strategies to take it further. How do we win the battle? Definitely, I think we will eventually win the battle. On behalf of AMAN, Forum Asia, and ADN, once again, we thank all of you, all our who have joined us through Zoom and social media. Thank you very much once again. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you again.
Bye, everyone. Take care of yourself.
Bye. Have a good one.
Yes, you too.
Bye-bye, Najla. Bye-bye, Sanjar. Let's keep in touch.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. Good Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.